there, grateful gangsters. Lauren here, the Gratitude Addict. Thank you for bearing with us. We're a little bit late tonight because we are having a few technical difficulties. My amazing guest is from Australia, and I'm hoping that we got the tech issues straightened out. So we will bring her on. I have the absolute pleasure of having Dr. Kerry Howells with us tonight. She has a book out called Untangling You. How can I be grateful when I feel so resentful? And she has an incredible message. This is one of the best books I have read in a really long time. But before we get started, let me introduce you to me and the show. My name is Lauren Blanchard Zaleski, for those of you that have never watched before. And like I said, I'm the Gratitude Addict. I run a website called gratitudeaddict.com. My message is one of hope and healing despite living with struggles such as chronic pain and illness. And I run a group on Facebook, an amazing community called Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain. Let me have a banner here. So we would love to have you, if you are not a member, our Facebook group, Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain. And we just hit 8,200 members. And what makes us unique from other chronic pain communities is that we offer live chats where you're allowed to vent and share your fears and worries and concerns and all that. But in the group itself, we are positive and solution-based. And we do this by incorporating a daily gratitude practice into our lives. And this helps us to live with joy, intention, hope, and healing. So life does not have to end just because we've been diagnosed with chronic pain and illness or injured for that matter. So if you're new, welcome. I come every Thursday night and I bring an expert guest on the program who has a message of hope to share with us and gratitude. And Kerry has, like I said before, her book is a real game changer. It has been for me in my quest to find gratitude. So I can't wait to introduce you to her. Hopefully our tech issues will be ironed out. So before I bring her on, hopefully I'll bring her on. Just a couple of things. This is episode 75, which is just unbelievable. I started this broadcast back in right when the pandemic first started, April 2020. And I've been coming just about every Thursday, and it started off really very few guests, and now it's guests every single week. And at this point, I'm booked, and through April, which is I'm just so humbled and grateful for all the wonderful, incredible expert guests who have an important message to share with my audience. During our broadcast, we do love to get comments and questions, and I try to get as many on the screen as possible. So if you'd like to comment or have a question for Dr. Howells, please feel free. I try to get as many on the screen as I can. Before I bring her, I see she's still having issues. So hopefully we get that worked out. I haven't had that, but like I said, she's from Australia, so she's pretty far away. If you are watching from inside Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain, I tend to say this every week, but not everybody is getting it. So on your screen, if you comment, it's going to look like your name pops up. But unless you give StreamYard permission to use your name and face, you will not come up on my screen, which means, you can still comment, but you're going to come up as Facebook user. So you need to log in at StreamYard.com/Facebook. So it's going to look like this when you hit that, and you just need to grant permission. Supposedly you only need to do it once and then you never have to do it again, but I hear that is not true. So please, if you want your comments to come up on the screen, and this is only if you're watching from inside Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain. So there's that. And then finally, before I bring Kerry on, I see she's on, so hopefully we have it worked out. I don't normally get really, well, we're very honest in this program, of course, and we have to dive into some really tough subjects. Many of you know, I put a book out in November called The 5-Minute Gratitude Journal for Teen Boys. And so I was asked to do it. And when I was originally asked to do it back in the spring, I'm like, oh, it's hard enough getting, people with chronic pain and illness to be grateful. How the heck am I going to get teen boys, to practice gratitude? But it turned out to be such an incredible blessing in my life. And I've become sort of an unexpected advocate for teen mental health. And I shared in the group the other day, I was just on the Gratitude podcast with George and Benta this week, where he interviewed me about the book and teen mental health. Since I put the book out, I've really been paying attention to the state of teen mental health, and I've just been knocked off my socks recently with some of the things I've been hearing. I learned that, back in October, the American Academy of Pediatrics, along with two other medical groups, have issued a national declared a national state of emergency when it comes to children's mental health. And our Surgeon General just in December declared something very similar. The last 2 years of the pandemic have been incredibly critical and horrible for teen mental health. The rates of depression and very serious mental illnesses have skyrocketed. They were already going up, but the past 2 years have been really difficult for teens. I know Goldie Hawn, the actress, has been putting a lot of press out there to address the issue. So what I'd like to say is I just want to start the conversation with people and make you aware that this is a national epidemic. If you know a teen boy in your life, you can buy the book. If you have my book, if you could leave a review on Amazon, that helps it to get seen. I've already been paid for the book, so I don't get a portion of the book sales. I truly just care about teens and mental health, because it's going to be something that stays with us a long time, and our kids are suffering. So off of my soapbox, let us bring our guest on. Hopefully, I don't see her here. Let's see. All right, now it looks like she's trying. I've got Dr. Kerry Howells. So before she's trying to get on. So hopefully we can get her on. Poor thing, she's trying really hard. So her book is called Untangling You. How can I be grateful when I feel so resentful? And she has been working for 25 years in the area of gratitude and resentments. And hopefully she's going to talk about how she got into this work. Living with chronic pain and illness for me has brought a whole slew of resentments against people, and I'm not talking personally here, but I know chronic pain in general from my community. It can bring resentments against a whole lot of people. We can have resentments against our spouses, siblings, friends, or past friends, possibly friends that are no longer friends. Maybe they didn't handle our illness in the way that we felt they should handle it, or maybe we didn't handle it well and we drove them away. We can have resentments against, the medical community. I think she's on. Let's get her on. Kerry, hi, you here?
Hello. I'm just walking around the house.
Hi.
I'm just walking around the house trying to find a place where the internet works.
Oh, you poor thing.
Yeah. I'll
Thank
just go
you
back.
for being here.
That's okay. We'll just do our best.
Yeah, we'll do our best. So this is Dr. Kerry Howells. Again, she's the author of this wonderful book that just came out, 2 weeks ago or something, right, Kerry?
Last year, just at the end of last year.
Yes. So, and I found you through Jordan and the Gratitude podcast. You were a guest on his podcast, and I was looking at the list of his guests, and I'm like, who is this? And I saw the book, and I grabbed it instantly. And then I joked that I stalk my guests, but I contacted you right away because your message is so important for my community, people living with chronic pain and illness. So thank you for being here, and thank you for bearing with all the tech difficulties.
That's okay. I had a much nicer background and everything.
It was.
But we just have to settle with this. I'm in the corner of the house where the internet's strongest. Oh well, everything's gone.
Yes,
according to how it's meant to go.
Well, I'll just describe. She had a lovely outdoor background, but she's in a corner of her basement or something. But the important thing is that you're here, and it looks all good now. So thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
If you would like to reach Dr. Howells, kerryhowells.com. And again, I've put in the comments the link to get her book. It's called Untangling You. How can I be grateful when I feel so resentful? So Dr. Howells, tell us how you got into this work. I know you've been doing it for 25 years.
Yes. Long story, but short story is I started out introducing gratitude to my ungrateful students at university. And they were philosophy students, and I thought they were having to do this philosophy course, which is really hard to teach when people are having to do a course that isn't voluntary. as many teachers in your audience will know. And I just really noticed that I was really excited and grateful for the opportunities that I was giving them, and they were really the opposite. And they'd come in from their Club Med holidays and in their fancy cars and just, you know, stroll into class with their heads down, and we just hit stalemate. And I just suggested to them that their gratitude could really make a difference to their learning, and they wanted to know more. And so I started to develop exercises, and the rest is history. That then led on to my PhD on the role of gratitude in higher education. And then I went from there to develop a pedagogy for teachers and school leaders and now organizations. But alongside that, I had a lot of resentment towards my mother and my students. When I was inviting them to be grateful, I asked them to think about what they were most grateful for, and they said their parents. And that kind of hit a chord for me, because their gratitude was much more present than my gratitude was for my mother in particular. So then I decided to write my mother a gratitude letter. And that was probably the first time that I had really thanked her for being alive and permitting me.
And that was difficult for you. In the book, you talk about how difficult that was for you.
Yeah, it was really difficult, but it made a really, really big difference. It made a really big difference to our relationship, but it also made a really big difference to my own gratitude, and it deepened my sense of gratitude, because where I had resentment in that core relationship in my life, it was really, really hard to gather gratitude from other areas of my life. So it taught me that gratitude to our parents is probably one of the most important gratitude practices. But it also has taught me, since I've written this book, so many people want to know the mother story. Yeah. and they write to me saying that they've written letters to their parents, and it's made a really, really big difference to their physical well-being and to their relationships. So
is that right? So you think parents is the biggest one, probably, out of anything?
I think it is one of the biggest ones, yeah. And I think if we're finding it difficult to access gratitude, my whole hypothesis is that's because we have resentment in some area of our lives, and it's really hard to express gratitude where we have resentment. Mm-hmm. But the other part of my hypothesis is that if we have gratitude, if we have resentment in the core relationships in our lives, so that can also be between, you know, your spouse as well, but I think parents is really important. And I'm asked to go along to present gratitude to parents at schools, and they get quite surprised when I ask them to be grateful to their own parents. So if they're experiencing ingratitude and abuse and negativity and complaint from their students, from their kids, then often that can be a mirror to the resentment they might be holding towards their own parents, because that was my experience. I was experiencing a lot of ingratitude from my daughter. And then when I started to express gratitude, and my relationship with my mother healed 6 months before she died suddenly, through this gratitude letter, my relationship with my own daughter became better. And so on the basis of that experience, I go out and talk to parents about being more grateful to their parents if they want their own children to be more grateful.
I have so many questions, as you guys can tell. I loved this book. My mind's all over the place, but you talk about, like, you know, being, a lot of us have that one thing, you know, we'll say we can forgive everybody else, but perhaps there'll be that one thing, like, I'm not forgiving them, they don't deserve it, right? Will be our thought. But there's that famous quote, and I know it's kind of, people don't really know. Some say it was Nelson Mandela that said it, but resentment is like drinking poison, but expecting the other person to die. Which is so true. And I learned that in my 12-step meetings, you know, many years ago, that statement. And I found that to be true. And when you forgive somebody, it's not for them, it's for their benefit, right? It's really for us, for our growth.
Yes, but the other, I do address this in the book, and the other part of this, Lauren, is that where there is, we say that we forgive, but we don't forget. So there's often that common statement, I really forgive you, but I will never forget what you've done. Underneath, that's what we feel, because we feel that not if I don't forget, then that still holds you accountable, and I'm still saying that action was really wrong, and I'm going to hold on to that as part of my moral orientation to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so to forgive and not forget, is the not forgetting is where resentment resides. So I really believe the complete picture of forgiveness is also to address our resentment. And we know that because people say, I forgive you, but underneath, they don't forgive
Right.
us.
And you
You
had
know,
an
the
experience like
underbelly.
that in the book yourself, right? You thought you had forgiven somebody, and it turns out you really didn't fully forgive them. And once you were able to, right, then you opened up your gratitude practice even further.
Yes, yeah.
Um,
So I think not addressing resentment is a way of not forgiving, really. So we've got to go the whole picture. But it is, as Nelson Mandela says, resentment, it kind of tricks us into thinking that if we hold on to our resentment, we're going to make the other person suffer. We're going to make the other
right,
person wrong.
right.
But actually, the only person that it's hurting is ourselves. So, and in the context of chronic pain, for example, it's just making the chronic pain worse to hold on to the resentment, isn't it?
It really does. I know that to be true. If you had told me that years ago, I would have thought that there was no truth to that whatsoever. But the more I go into my personal growth in
Mm.
healing from the emotional effects of chronic pain, I know that these things that I harbor are preventing me, causing me more emotional pain for sure. And then often that causes me more physical pain as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I
But I
love
guess
I'm sorry, go.
no, it's okay. You go.
I love in the front of the book, the very first thing, you have a chart, definitions of resentment and gratitude, and you go into pretty good detail. There's the dictionary definition, your definition, um, and then. But what I love the most about this chart is at the very bottom, where resentment thrives and gratitude thrives. And
Mm,
gratitude thrives in cultures of cooperation, calmness, other centeredness, appreciation, interconnectedness, acceptance, and humility. And
mm,
resentment thrives in cultures of competition, stress, self centeredness, entitlement, isolationism, judgment, and perfectionism.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It says
Beautiful.
it all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. So how
Yeah.
did you I know you had the situation with your mother, but how did you really have like that moment where you kind of knew that resentment was the stumbling block that was preventing, or kind of, you call it the conceptual opposite of each other, yes?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So Robert Roberts is a really great philosopher, talks about the conceptual opposite of gratitude, which is resentment. And so I included that in a lot of my workshops, and I also use it as a basis for my first book, a chapter in my first book, which is called Gratitude and Education: A Radical View. And in that book, I have a chapter called In Toxic Orders. And many of my teachers and principals who I was working with would go straight to that chapter, even though it was chapter 7. They'd go straight to, I want to know about gratitude in toxic waters. And that was a mirror of the many workshops I've done around the world on this topic. In every single audience, the workshop comes alive when I start talking about this gratitude being the opposite of resentment. So I
Mm.
started to use that and I started to begin workshops with that, because many people would come up to me at the end of the workshops, often with a lot of pain in their eyes, asking me, how can I be grateful when I feel so resentful? So this was a way of my book is really an answer to the question that many people have. Like, they really are struggling. So they say, I can think of gratitude in this relationship, this situation, but you can never ever ask me to be grateful to this person.
Right,
And
right.
and my philosophy is that we need to be really absolutely addressing gratitude to that person if it's within reason, because I also talk about and give scope to this book in the first chapter, or in the introduction, saying that I'm really dealing with the everyday resentments, not the more traumatic kinds like abuse, domestic
Right.
violence,
Of course, yeah.
because I'm not a therapist, and that this is kind of way beyond that scope.
Mhm.
But people who have experienced resentment from those situations have said that they have got a lot from the book and from the work on gratitude and resentment in those contexts. But I'm really more talking about the everyday resentments, like
Right.
Being betrayed by your partner, even though and they're all quite traumatic. Sibling rivalry,
Right.
the neighbor next door not quietening their barking dog,
Yes.
the partner not doing their fair share of the housework.
Right.
All of that is they're kind of the everyday resentments, but to the person they're quite traumatic.
And that's something separate you would suggest to deal with. So, a severe childhood trauma or something would be dealt with differently, with a therapist or something like that. But this is
Yes.
your everyday resentments that are holding us back. I find I don't like to admit how many resentments I have. And it wasn't until reading, your book, Untangling You, that I realized how many I have. And some were large and some were small, but still significant enough, which surprised me.
Yes, yeah, they are. I think all of us, if we dig down, we do have. Well, unless you're saintly, unless you've done a lot of work on yourself, yeah. And I think they're like, just when we feel like we've got through the resentments, another one comes along to test us, because
Right.
resentment is, even though we don't want to ever make resentment okay, it is a great teacher, isn't it? It's a great teacher
It
about
is.
our boundaries being broken or our expectations not being met. It's a great teacher about conversations we need to have with others. It's a great teacher about how this is reflecting our own resentment. Like if somebody is resentful towards us, then we can ask ourselves whether or not we've got resentment somewhere else in our lives. So
Yeah, you have a whole chapter in the book devoted to dealing with others' resentments of us. Do you want to talk
yes,
about that a little bit?
yeah. Well, sometimes people will say to me, I don't actually have any resentment. And then I say to them, well, maybe you've got a situation where people are resentful towards you. And that's often because people are envious of how nice these people are and they're very resentful towards them. But it's really hard to deal with another person's resentment. It can make us feel paranoid, and it can destroy our workplace situation, and it can really disrupt our family. It can also cause us to feel really unwell. And so often we can see the resentment from others perhaps as us not having any part in it, but I'm arguing that it really helps for us to really reflect on what that resentment is saying about how we might have broken someone else's expectations, or how we might have made them feel inferior in some way, which are the two causes of resentment that I've investigated. So one of the key strategies out of this book is to have that as a reflection every day. Have I made someone feel inferior? Have I broken their expectations? And if so, how can I address this tomorrow or as soon as possible? Because in that way, we're keeping an eye on the causes of resentment, how we might cause somebody, without intentionally ever doing so,
Right.
we might cause someone to feel resentment. So this is a really good way of stopping resentment in its tracks by reflecting on those
That's
three
a
questions.
beautiful idea. That could be a mantra in the morning,
Yeah,
or at the end of the day,
at the end of the day, yeah.
constantly visiting yourself and recognizing that. You wrote something in the book that you wrote many things that knocked me on my socks, but in dealing with others' resentments towards us, you said one of the most destructive responses is no response at all. And that
Yes.
one really affected me because I've done that. I've when somebody has expressed something to me, I mean, not recently, but I've just kind of let it go. And you talk about how dangerous that is, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, for someone to come and talk to us about their resentment is a very courageous act.
Yes.
And the reason why resentment is festering in our relationships and our lives and society more generally is that we haven't been educated in both how to talk about our resentment, but also how to identify it in the first place, but also how to receive it when someone else wants to raise it with us. So we take it personally, and it just makes our resentment grow. And resentment is met by other resentment.
You're
And
right.
so I know a person who's climbed the Himalayas, come back from cancer, had 5 kids, and still that, and done a PhD, but the thought of confronting, and they call it confrontation, confronting another person with their resentment is terrifying for
Oh, that's
them.
much scarier, isn't it?
It's much
Yeah.
scarier. And
Yeah.
because it's scary, we often just dismiss it and go, this is just too complex. And we also dismiss the other person. So when somebody has the courage and humility to come up and talk to us about their resentment, the absolute best thing we can do is to thank them and to say, thank you for coming. I know how hard that is. And it doesn't mean we have to solve their problem or not feel hurt by it, because we often do. Raises things, but it's really important that we acknowledge that act so that they can be encouraged to, and if they're not doing that, they're talking behind our backs, because resentment's got to be resent somewhere.
Right.
And if it's not resent directly to the person who's caused the pain is the ultimate, but often we need to put boundaries around that if that's going to be safe or not. But if we can address it directly with the person, it means we don't do the other things, which is to either speak negatively behind their back because we're in so much pain, we're trying to get justice, or it goes inside us and makes us, our bodies toxic and causes a lot of mental illness and things. So
right, I've done that too. Oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Well, I'm thinking of it. Let's take some comments from our viewers. Thank you all for being here live with us tonight. If you're joining us late, I'm talking to Dr. Kerry Howells. We are talking to Dr. Kerry Howells. She's got this amazing book called Untangling You. How can I be grateful when I feel so resentful? I put the link to get it on Amazon in the comments if you want to look there. It's on Amazon. You can also get it on her website, which is kerryhowells.com. But let's take some comments here. Let's see who we've got. Suzanne Loss is here. Hello. Jill Cook is here. Hello. Christine Malloy. So true about expectations not being met. Yes. Facebook user totally guilty of this practice. If you're coming late, the reason why you're seeing Facebook user on my screen and not yours is because you're watching from inside Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain. Because we're a private group, you need to grant them permission to use your name to be on the screen. So if you want to, if you're welcome to keep on as Facebook user, but if you'd like to see your name on the screen, all you need to do is log in streamyard.com/Facebook, just click on it, grant them permission, and your name will come up. Let's see, any chance for an audiobook version? Would love to listen to it.
Oh, I'd love to do an audiobook. Yes, it's in the pipeline.
Great, I agree.
Yeah,
I'm
getting lots of requests for that, which is really good.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Howells, I'm sorry. Bravery and humility to approach us or us to approach them. Wow, yep.
Yeah. Because we often wait around, don't we, for the other person to do the apologizing. That's another trick of resentment. We stay stuck because we're waiting and we're blaming them and we're kind of thinking, how dare I? It's actually quite counterintuitive to do this work. And many people buy my book to give it to someone else rather than do their own work. So, to actually make the first move when you're the one who's been hurt is very courageous, isn't it? But I think it's the only way the world is going to change is if we do this work.
And that festers, right? And makes it grow the longer we wait. And you actually talk in that chapter about addressing others' resentments. You talk about it providing us with leadership qualities when we're able to do that and meet those resentments towards us. In a way that it's and I never thought about it that way. It's beautiful.
Yeah, a good leader will be creating a really trusting workplace where resentments are identified by the leader and by their leadership team. And also when they're looking out with those 3 questions I named before, looking out for where they might have unintentionally made someone feel inferior or broken their expectations and going straight away and addressing that. You can see it in meetings, like in classrooms, like the light in the eyes go out, or the person looks away, or they start doing something on their phone or something. You can feel that you've actually done something that has been a bit hurtful. And address the courage of a leader to address that is really important.
You talk about something right in the beginning of the book, actually, when you're talking about, the moment where you and your mother kind of made up thanks to your letter. You talk about something that really affected me deeply called deep gratitude. and
Yeah,
how your gratitude just kind of went to another level. Is that how you would describe it?
that's right. Yeah, it did go to another level because my gratitude to my core in my core relationship was not there. It just wasn't. It was consumed by resentment towards my mother. So I couldn't find gratitude. And then just in writing the letter, in actually taking action, I was able to find what I call deep gratitude, because gratitude to me isn't just about an individual feeling. It's about taking action on that feeling and giving. It's a cyclical process of what I have received from somebody and how can I give back in some way. So it's highly relational and it's highly social. It's a social emotion, and it's about giving back to the other person or to somebody else. It doesn't have to be reciprocal. And it's
Right.
also about not changing the other person. It's about
Right.
not having any expectations. That's an important aspect. So I wasn't writing that gratitude letter to change my mother. I was writing that letter to find some peace and reconciliation and acknowledgement in myself. So when we start practicing gratitude to change somebody else, then we've lost the true art of gratitude, I feel. And it's a really hard one to get right, because in my work with principals, for example, like they write letters home to the parents after they've discovered gratitude, and they go, oh, I'm going to write letters to the parents to thank them for their children. And then they come back to the book club the next week or so, and they go, this gratitude doesn't work because I didn't get any letter back from them.
Oh.
So, it's natural for us,
Mhm.
especially if we're any kind of profession where we're about bringing about change in others. It's natural for us to think that we'll practice gratitude so that somebody else will change. So that's not gratitude anymore.
Right.
That's not deep.
People think of it as a transactional
Yes.
thing, and deep gratitude, I guess you would say deep gratitude is really is not expecting anything in return. It's kind of, would
Yeah.
you say, coming to a place of acceptance in a way
Oh,
for how
yes.
things were?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Acceptance is a really important aspect, but also just doing it so that looking at the changes inside us, not looking at our success in our gratitude or in the move from resentment towards gratitude, not looking for that in the other person, looking for that inside ourselves.
Right. And acceptance is a massive part of our healing,
Yeah.
emotionally, with chronic pain and illness as well. And that's kind of the
Mm.
catalyst of the message that I send out. Is I was not able to start healing until I came to that place of acceptance, and I have to redo it every day. I have to
Yeah.
come to that place of acceptance, because I will, I'll have a good day and then I'll tend to overdo it. And then the next day I will pay for it. And I know exactly what's going to happen. I've lived with it for 22 years. But without acceptance, and maybe it's similar to resentment, but without acceptance, there's no way, no place for me to go. I can't move forward until I
Mm.
accept things. You don't have to like it, but you do
Yes.
have to accept it, right?
Yes, yeah. And so I guess gratitude, I think acceptance is a strong pillar of gratitude. And I imagine for you, Lauren, the gratitude takes it to another level, doesn't it? Because it's about seeing the gift in the pain as well.
Right.
And
Right.
and we've just been really blessed to have the Australian of the Year is announced at this time every year, and it's a great big deal. Like, it's something given by our Prime Minister, and it's highly competitive. And this wonderful disabled sports person called Dylan Alcott won. And his acceptance speech, if your listeners can listen to this, his acceptance speech is such a beautiful example of
Really.
gratitude, where he says, I love my disability. He's been disabled all his life. He's been in a wheelchair all his life. He says, I love my disability. And the other aspect of what his work is really philanthropic, for the sake of the cause of disability, people with disability, and his service to others, in the heart of gratitude, is also a way of him rising above his disability. So I
Right.
think we can learn a lot from people like that, and people in your audience, and yourself included, who rise above it, but also see it as a gift in some way. If you can get to that, like, it's beyond acceptance, isn't it? It's like,
Right.
I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
And you're doing that in your podcast, obviously. That seems to me like, when we're doing things in the service of others, that seems to kind of help us rise above
It
our
does.
pain in some ways, doesn't
It
it?
does. And,
Yeah.
I think people think of service as having to, like, go work in a soup kitchen or something like that, and not,
Mm.
not everybody's able to do that. Service can take so many different forms. It doesn't have to be starting a group or having a show either. It can be very small things, but getting outside of ourselves and helping another is so vital. I'm glad you brought that up. And you talk a lot in the book about the relationship of gratitude and connection, which is another subject that's near and dear to me. I have other social media channels, but my heart and soul is in the Facebook group, because that is where we connect with each other. And, a lot of us with chronic pain, we tend to isolate a lot, even before the pandemic, but even more so with the pandemic, we isolate and we don't let people into our lives. And that was a really big stumbling block for me. It took me down a very dark path. So you talk about the relationship of gratitude and connection, how gratitude improves our relationships, right?
It does, yeah. We can't have flourishing relationships without gratitude. Like it's the moral cohesion, as a sociologist would say, has said. It's the glue that keeps relationships going and keeps them together. And gratitude is a special way of acknowledging that relationship as well. This whole idea that I mentioned in the book called reconnaissance, which is the French word for gratitude, and how when we express gratitude to someone in a really meaningful way, so it's got to be meaningful to them. So we often tend to express gratitude in a way that's meaningful to us, but it may not have any resonance with them. So I wrote a letter to my mother, because I know that she loves receiving letters. But if I didn't choose that specifically for her, then that might not have been a totally effective gratitude practice. And so when we express gratitude in a really meaningful way, then we're bringing a sense of identity and community and connection in a way that nothing else can give us. That's the power of gratitude. Wow. So that's why deep gratitude to me is way beyond our own feelings. It's much more of an action where we're trying to express gratitude to those who we've received from in the past. And then it becomes complete.
Wow.
Like we start with that feeling, and then but to stop with the feeling it's not bringing gratitude into its true power to bring about transformation in the world and in organizations, in families. So it's a truly connecting thing, because we have to think about what we're grateful for and before we express that gratitude. So that just that thinking automatically brings us into connection with the other person.
Wow. Her entire book is like that, guys. Untangling You. How can I be grateful when I feel so resentful? You don't even know I did this. Every page I went, I'm like highlighting all over the place. But one of the quotes in the book I loved so much, I actually turned it into a graphic. You don't know I did this. So I love this one. It's only when we experience the discomfort of not being able to find gratitude that a path opens for growth and transformation. And there are so many days where my pain is bad, or, even if it's not pain related, we all have various struggles and all that. And it can be very challenging to find gratitude on those days. But that quote talks about how it's even more meaningful, right? It's more when you only experience the discomfort of not being able to find gratitude, that a path opens for growth and transformation.
Yes. Yeah. Gratitude can help us see possibilities, can't it? Mm-hmm. Like resentment, that's why I really love contrasting it with resentment, because whatever gratitude does, resentment does the opposite. So when we're in resentment, all we can see is our pain and our lack and our limitations and what other people aren't doing, or what the system's not doing for us, or what our doctors aren't doing. And then gratitude opens up this possibility of being able to see, oh, there's something else here. There's something else. But we've got to be honest with where gratitude is difficult. Right. And it requires, again, a degree of courage to be able to say, I'm not perfect. I'm not grateful all the time. I don't believe in being grateful all the time anyway. I'd love to be, but it's just not within my reach. So to find areas where we're not grateful, and step by step, practice by practice, working with them, that's where the gold is.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was something I wanted to talk with you. I chuckled through that section because you talk about master. You can't master gratitude, I believe you say, and
Yeah.
I was just writing about this. Oh, you say on page 88, you say, although I considered myself well versed in the role of gratitude in adversity and had taught on this specific topic many times, when it came to finding gratitude in my own experience of intense suffering, quite simply, nothing worked. This is in relation, she had developed shingles, which is a very painful condition.
Mm.
So I was just writing about this 2 days ago, talking about, having some struggles in my life and how my life's work and my passion is in spreading gratitude. I'm the gratitude addict. I spread this. I know what to do, but that doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. I am very human and work in progress every single day. So when you wrote that, I had to chuckle because I just completely related to it.
Great. Yes. Yeah. I think our perfectionism around gratitude doesn't really thrive at all in an environment where we're trying to be perfect. That's why I call it a practice.
Oh my gosh, that's a
and,
quote right there.
and self-resentment arises out of perfectionism, doesn't it? And self-resentment can really make us really sick as well. And we suffer from our own disappointment in ourselves and in the way we put ourselves down. And self-gratitude is all about accepting our imperfections and accepting where we don't go well. And like my university students ask me what is my philosophy of teaching, and I say to make lots of mistakes.
Oh, I love that.
So I think the same with gratitude. Like we make a lot of mistakes along the way, and especially with someone we're trying to be, who we've held a long-term resentment towards, it has to be a practice, and it can't be perfect. The notion of practice is that it's not perfect. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to practice it.
Right. And I'm so glad you brought up self-resentment because that's a huge one that I want to get to. But let's get to some of our comments. Oh, you're frozen on my end. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're unfrozen. Okay.
I don't have to go anywhere further down the dungeon.
No, I think you're all right. Linda Canalicchio, gratitude is the glue that keeps our relationships together. I like that. I always thought love should do that, but it doesn't. Thank you. Agreed. Helen Van Manen, gratitude helps us see possibilities. When we are in resentment, we can only see our pain.
Yeah.
Great point. Great point. Tina Egabine, acceptance, gratitude, and service are all a major part of AA 12 steps. Does your literature and your webinars reference this?
No, it doesn't reference it, but I want to acknowledge that it is part of it. But my ideas haven't been drawn from that. But I acknowledge that it's a really important fundamental principle, and how great.
As far as my work with attitude of gratitude with chronic pain, which many of you guys are part of the group from, I am a student I came out of 12-step program. So a lot of my message comes from that as well. I don't preach it completely, but a lot of my message is, some kind of Buddhist philosophy and a lot of 12-step and all that kind of chewed up and out. But yeah, resentment first came into my knowledge from 12-step literature. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Comment. It's not about them. It's about us. Truth and reconciliation. It's for our peace. Yes. Excellent point. Resentment can make our chronic pain so much worse without us realizing it. Paco, what is the best way to get the person you have resentment to convince them to read your book?
Read it yourself first. Yeah. It's a really good question. When I had my book launch, I had this person stand up and say, I love my resentment. I don't want to let go of it. It makes me who I am and gives me a sense of self. And I've held it. I've had it close to me for 20 years. Like, don't get me to give up my resentment. So, so I think with another person's resentment, it really helps if you understand the nature of your own resentment, to then see how it's played out and bring all that out into the light, so you can see how it's played out with other people in your life who have resentment towards you. So to see them as mirrors of each other is a really helpful thing, I think.
Great
Yeah. So read the book first and then anonymously send it to them.
And say, hey, I just read this book. Maybe you want to read it. The name of the book is Untangling You. How can I be grateful when I feel so resentful? And we're talking to Dr. Kerry Howells. We still have her for another 10 minutes. I have so many things I want to talk to you about, but as is topical on page 86. So today is National Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Wow.
Just so happens to be here in the United States, at least. I would assume it's international, but I'm not sure, which is timely because there was a quote in here by one of my, somebody I look up to very much, Viktor Frankl, whose amazing book, Man's Search for Meaning, has such meaning in my life. But he lost his wife and his parents and brother in the Holocaust. Yes. And then he describes in detail his horrific experience in the concentration camp. And I'll quote you. You say, he explores the difference between those whose spirit was destroyed by their suffering and those who took, and this is part of his quote, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way.
Yeah.
I use that quote a lot in Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain, that a couple of his, but that one, I look at him, hear his words, and I think, gosh, if he can reframe his thinking, I can certainly reframe my thinking, right?
Absolutely. And part of that chapter, I also talk about how gratitude, just the word gratitude, reminds us that we have a choice. Like it's power. When you hear it, you go, oh, that's right. Where's my gratitude? So even if we're in a state of resentment, even just saying the word thank you can actually shift the attitude. It doesn't replace the resentment, but it's powerful enough to give us a bit more agency and a bit more of a sense of choice in this. So it's very powerful. And that quote is like one of the core pinnacles of this work as well, because if he can do it, then we can do it, can't we?
Right. Yeah. So I wanted, before I broke to the comments, you had mentioned having resentments against ourselves, and people with chronic pain. I'll speak for myself, but I know I've shared with many of the other people in my community. A lot of us do harbor resentments against ourselves for many reasons. We can think that we possibly caused our condition. We can resent ourselves because we think we should be able to cure ourselves, or I should have done more than just watch TV today. Or, there's so many things like that we can just, I find, for me at least, they build up inside of me and can be tough to break out of. Do you want to talk a little bit about how to get through things like that?
Well, I think it still comes back to perfectionism, doesn't it? Like the image of ourselves as being a particular person who goes through chronic illness with in this particular way. And the more we read about people who do that really well, we think, oh, I want to become that person. And so there's a whole lot of non-acceptance of what we really are and who we are in relationship to chronic pain, where we're at. So any kind of inkling or language or something around us not doing what we feel like we should be doing is a sure indication that we are in perfection mode of behavior. And that can be dangerous for a whole lot of reasons, because it does make us beat ourselves up when we're not perfect. But also it's really dangerous because it doesn't allow gratitude in. So gratitude's like starting at the bottom of the graph and at 0% and going, and anything above 0%, we're going, oh wow, look at what I was able to do today. Despite my chronic pain, I was able to do this. And that's gratitude. I'm grateful for what I can do. Whereas if we're in perfection mode, we're starting with 100%, which is what a lot of the theories about chronic pain and getting through things well are starting with. And we beat ourselves up and we're resentful towards ourselves because we're starting with this 100% down and we're going, I wanted to be here, but I'm only here. So I wanted to not be watching television, but here I am. Or I wanted to be nicer to my spouse, even though I'm in a lot of chronic pain, but I wasn't. So there's a whole lot of dissatisfaction and self-resentment going here. Whereas if we have the starting point and keep reminding ourselves of zero and whatever we can do, that can really help shift us.
Yeah, we work on that in attitude of gratitude with chronic pain, or we try to anyway. In the morning, we post a post where people can set their daily, my apologies, they can set their daily intentions. And I call it a loose roadmap written in pencil. It's kind of, it gives us a little bit of a, a view of what we would like our day to look like, but rather than goals which are concrete and set us up for resentment if we fail. An intention is just something we intend to do. So if we make it, we do, and if not, that's okay. And then at the end of the day, we do 3 things we did well today. Because
Great.
that self-talk, a lot of people think that it's silly, but for me at least, it really works.
It really, really works. Yes. Yeah.
Even
And we've
putting
got
my
to,
hand on my heart, somehow I feel connected to myself.
yes. Yeah. And the more we can build self-gratitude, the more we can like congratulate ourselves for our strengths and getting through, and the value we give to others, the value we give to the world, whatever we can find about ourselves, like just getting through a day of chronic pain, like that needs to be congratulated.
Yeah.
And we need to feel self-gratitude from that rather than what we're not doing.
It's true. Sayings like "no pain, no gain," that does not apply to people with chronic pain.
No.
There's that balance where you have to practice self-care, but also step outside of your comfort zone a little bit. And, there's also, Dr. House, there's also resentment because many of us, when we get sick or injured, we lose our occupations or what we used to do. So we feel like we've lost our sense of identity in a way.
Yeah.
So we feel like, and it could be in our heads, some people may look down on us, we look down on ourselves. It's very complex, what, a lot of the thoughts that we have going on in these heads of ours.
Yes. And that's why Viktor Frankl's work can really help all of us going through that, kind of, because he's saying find meaning in the pain.
Right.
Find, if you can't do anything about the suffering, find some meaning in the suffering. And I guess he's just saying what you're saying, Lauren, which is to accept it and make the most of it. And the way we go through pain is really educating all the people around us. And so if we want people to be gentle with themselves and we're gentle with ourselves during pain, then that really helps others be gentle with themselves, doesn't it?
That's a great point. Yeah. Vicki Blackbird, we have a couple of minutes. Vicki wants to know how to encourage people to come to me versus others when they have an issue. That's a great question.
It's a great question. And I've got a whole chapter on that. But I think to recognize that this takes a lot of trust and building the relationships. So we need to establish the trust with that person for them to feel safe enough for us to go to them, but also in the language that we're using in our communication. So in a work situation, if a leader says, I have an open door, I much prefer you to come directly to me, I 100% guarantee confidentiality. I won't necessarily be able to solve this problem, but I will listen. And I will attend to you, and I will not make you feel bad. I will actually congratulate you. If we've got all, and if we also accompany that with statements like our relationship really matters. And so if we start a conversation around that by saying, because the relationship matters, I really want to hear, that can create a lot of safety as well.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So we've got to create the environment where people feel able to do that, and again to recognize that this is one of the hardest things for people to do. So don't beat them up or don't judge them if they're not doing that. Just recognize that we've got to create an environment where that's possible.
That's fantastic advice. I also read a book a few months ago that discussed the importance of vulnerability. I find a very strong correlation between that and gratitude. These are 2 topics I never thought I would dive into, but I am so glad I did.
Yeah, can I just draw a distinction between vulnerability and gratitude? Because it might also help in drawing a distinction between positivity, gratitude and positivity, optimism, empathy. The thing that makes gratitude is this cyclical thing that I was talking about before, where we acknowledge what we've received from another or from a situation, and we're motivated to give back in some way. So vulnerability is wonderful and really important, but it can often just be about our own internal state rather than this very interrelationship, interconnectedness aspect that is inherent to gratitude. So I just hope that distinction, because a lot of gratitude can get watered down by people's inability to understand that the gratitude's not the same as these other kind of concepts. Not that I'm making your listener wrong. I just wanted to use that as an opportunity to clarify what gratitude, the essential aspect of gratitude.
It's great. That was all part of, that section in the front I was talking about, that chart where you go into deep detail in the definitions of resentments and gratitude, and talk about gratitude as distinct from positivity, optimism, praise, and kindness. Because I get a lot of that too. When I tell people outside of the group about my group, they think they don't really understand what true gratitude is. They think that it's looking on the bright side, and that is absolutely not at all what my intention of gratitude is anyway. It's a practice, and it's walking through our struggles with acceptance and coming out the other side towards joy rather than staying stuck. I think of myself stewing in the problem, which I used to do. But getting rid of these resentments, guys. Again, the book is Untangling You. How can I be grateful when I feel so resentful? Dr. Kerry Howells. I can't believe our hour's up already. I knew it was going to go fast, but I had no idea. It's been such a pleasure to have you on. I hope maybe I can have you back sometime, because I know we got so much out of your wisdom and knowledge, and thank you for the work that you do.
Pleasure. Yeah, thank you. I'd love to come back, and thank you for the opportunity, Lauren, and for all the work you're doing. It's fabulous.
Thank you. It's a privilege. These are amazing people that we attract, and I feel very humbled to be able to do it. To find out more about Dr. Howells, you can find her at her website, kerryhowells.com. And thanks everybody. Thank you for those of you that were able to tune in live. We appreciate the give and take of our live audience. And if you're watching taped, thank you. You can find out more about me at gratitudeaddict.com and the group and all that other stuff. And I will see you guys next week. Peace and love. Get your gratitude on. And I have a brand new closing. Let's see if it works today. I usually forget to do it. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Howells. Thank you again for being here. Bye, gang.
Thank you very much. Bye.